So we want to turn now to the latest development in the battle over classified documents former President Trump kept at his Mar-a-Lago home and club after leaving office, after leaving the White House. The former president has filed an emergency request asking the Supreme Court to allow the special master to review the roughly 100 classified records that federal agents seized from the Florida estate in August. Specifically, the Trump team asked the High Court to vacate part of a ruling issued last month by the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. That ruling allowed the Justice Department to resume using those classified documents as part of its criminal investigation to determine if Trump or his advisors mishandled national security secrets or hid or destroyed government records. The Supreme Court justice assigned to the 11th Circuit is Justice Clarence Thomas. He ordered the Justice Department to respond to Trump's request by next Tuesday.
Yeah, you know, Willie, the Trump team and Donald Trump are trying to defy legal gravity. They went forum shopping in Florida, and
they're doing it here in a way.
Though I don't like to criticize federal judges, because I think for the most part they do their best through their own worldview to rule on the law. We have a district court judge in South Florida not doing that at all. In fact, making a fool of herself, overturned by the 11th Circuit, and now. Of course, even stepping on legally, stepping on the special master, I've got to believe this is all, they're delays and they're succeeding in delays. But when you have a circuit, perhaps the most conservative circuit in America, the 11th Circuit, which is sort of the right's answer to the 9th Circuit out west, you can only delay it so long when the 11th Circuit overturns this district court judge in Florida. And I know Clarence Thomas is at the top of the briefing and everything. But at the end of the day, they're going to have to convince, I believe, a highly skeptical Supreme Court to reverse the most conservative circuit in America. I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, the Trump team went forum shopping, and the 11th Circuit said no sale. And now you have Judge Cannon still meddling in the special master that she appointed, saying, wait a minute, this isn't going the way that it was supposed to go. So now you have Donald Trump. Surely we know him thinking, well, look, I appointed 3 of those justices. They owe me a favor. Let's get this all the way to the Supreme Court and see what they can do for me. Let's bring in former U.S. Attorney and senior FBI official Chuck Rosenberg. Chuck, good morning. So what do you make of this latest motion trying to get this all the way to the Supreme Court? Is it a dead end?
Well, probably in the end, this isn't going to work out for Mr. Trump. Willie, let me explain why. First, there's no requirement that the Supreme Court even take this case. The issues are rather narrow and rather modest and, frankly, somewhat uninteresting. At least from a technical legal standpoint. Number 2, Willie, even if they take the case, there's no guarantee that Mr. Trump wins. And then third, even if they take the case and Mr. Trump wins, we're really only talking about a process to review documents that's ultimately going to end up in the hands of the folks who need it, the government doing the investigation. So rather narrow, rather modest. And I think in the end, Joe's instincts are right, as they often are. I don't see the Supreme Court overturning a conservative 11th Circuit on this rather narrow question.
So, Chuck, certainly Trump team knows geography and knows this would end up with Clarence Thomas. I was hoping you could just talk to us a little bit about the role he could play here. And we should reiterate, he was the lone vote on the Supreme Court against efforts there with documents before. We should also note, of course, his wife, Ginny Thomas, just last week reiterated that she believes the 2020 election was stolen. And we know she talked to the January 6th committee about her efforts to overturn the results in Wisconsin and Arizona. What do you make of this? And is there any chance that he might give in to public pressure and recuse himself?
Well, let me take the first part first. Each of the justices of the Supreme Court, and you know there are 9, oversee different parts of the country for emergency matters. Justice Thomas is assigned to the 11th Circuit, which includes this litigation that we're talking about, Jonathan. But I don't think Justice Thomas is going to rule on his own. If anything, the Supreme Court would get involved. If anyone gets involved, the Supreme Court as a whole would get involved. And again, I think there's a fairly good chance that they refuse to hear the matter altogether. Should he recuse? Well, it's an interesting question, right? His wife is obviously an election denier. They maintain they have separate lives and separate opinions when it comes to his professional work, and I credit that. But it does raise an appearance question, right? You want judges and justices to recuse when there's an actual conflict, let's say a financial interest in the outcome of litigation. That's not the case here. But often judges step aside when there's an appearance of a conflict. That's up to them. Nobody can force Justice Thomas to recuse. But given the questions that have arisen, it's something he ought to think about.
Yeah, the thing is, of course, though, this doesn't pertain to elections. It pertains to the classified documents or the documents themselves. So chances are good he won't do that. I do want to just, Chuck, let's underline, though, how thin ice Donald Trump is on legally here. He is right now fighting. He's not even fighting a central issue. He's fighting something that should be a basic part of their pleadings, which is that these documents were declassified. That has been his argument. The special master said, okay, put up or shut up. If you declassified them, tell us when you declassified them, right? This is not a massive Perry Mason moment. It's like, okay, you declassified them. Okay, tell us.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, we're not going to tell you.
Right here.
And they're actually fighting. And I cannot even believe the special master has embarrassed herself so much to say, oh, wait, no. They don't have to tell you whether they declassified them or not. And it's fascinating because, as you know, look at the statute. The classification status isn't, in the end, even going to determine whether he's charged or not.
Yeah, that's such a good point, Joe, right? So one of the statutes at issue, one of the statutes on which the search warrant was predicated was the Espionage Act, passed in 1917. We didn't have classified documents in 1917. The classification system came into existence after World War II in the 1950s. And so it doesn't matter in the end. The important thing, though, and I don't want folks to lose sight of this, is that the government, in doing its damage assessment right now, today, tomorrow, can still use the classified information it sees from the home. So that work is ongoing, and that's important. But you're absolutely right. When a judge asks you a question, it's not the same as sort of pontificating on television like I'm doing now. You have to answer the question. You have to answer the question. And so when the judge wants to know whether or not these documents were actually declassified, Mr. Trump and his team have refused to answer that fundamental basic question. So on one hand, it doesn't matter in the end. The case won't turn on the classification status of the documents. On the other, I think their failure to answer the question is quite telling. Hey, Joe, could I add just one thing, which I think is important, but not directly on this matter? I love the opening of your show. I'm a huge baseball fan, but you also have to give a shout out to Albert Pujols, who will finish this season and his career number 2 all-time in RBIs and number 4 all-time in home runs.
We
Chuck.
will certainly do that, Chuck. We will certainly do that. And,
Okay.
And by my count, he's actually third, only behind Hank Aaron and Babe Ruth. So should he stick around another season and get past Ruth's 714?
Oh, it's a great question. I'm a huge fan of Albert Pujols, always have been, always admired him. He has said this is his last season, that he's not coming back. I respect and honor that. I don't think he has anything more to prove, Joe. One of the great all-time ball players.
Incredible.
Former